Hello everyone. So this video lecture is going to be about collaboration in writing, or chapters 10 and 11 in the textbook. Um, uh, Collaboration in writing is a broad topic that has to do with there's a lot having to do with sort of what's in the textbook and what's common practice nowadays and all of that. So what I'm going to talk about is not necessarily going to follow the textbook. And we're also going to hit on revision to get ready for the first workshop in our class, where you guys will be giving each other feedback on the research papers before they come to me for a grade. So my quotes are not just completely random. The first draft of Anything is Shit by Ernest Hemingway, which is very true as we talk about collaboration in writing and theories of revision. So we're not doing that, not doing that, not doing that, not doing that. All right. So relating to writing as collaboration, you need to understand that writing stories is a relatively new construct of our culture in the grand scheme of things. Talking about humanity as in general, not necessarily, Anglo-Saxon or European or American culture, but just writing as human culture as a whole. So originally, stories were passed down orally. We call this the oral tradition. And components of the oral tradition have a lot to do with poetry, actually. The meter, rhyming, all of those things. These were all created anthropologically as an effort to make stories more memorizable, so that prior to written language, we could pass on stories through generations, which is very interesting to understand, in that it's not limited just to poetry, although that's the most easily accessible. So much of what we do in creative writing in general has to do with the necessity of the reader or the listener understanding the story and being able to pass it along to future generations. Okay. So it wasn't until relatively recently that written language became a part of our culture. Even up until the medieval period, stories were most often passed on to the next generation through oral retellings. And there's a lot that has to do with the written tradition as it evolved from the oral tradition. So, contemporarily, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of personality stuff. We'll put it that way, as simply as I can. A lot of personality stuff that is beneficial to the writer. But during the oral tradition, stories were passed to new generations in group settings. An elder of the tribe would tell a story that the listeners around the fire would absorb, understand, memorize, and then pass on to future generations. The written tradition is much more beneficial to the writer, in that you can write as a solitary act. The act of writing, the act of passing along stories, is now a solitary act. And there are certain benefits and detriments to what is now the written tradition, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So that's how the oral tradition has evolved into the modern tradition of writing. Genetic criticism is a big part of this. Hold on, let me find my quote. Where is it? So, genetic criticism has begun to focus on the evolution of manuscripts from drafts to published form, which is very, very important to understand because nothing in modern publishing is just the writer. My literary agent, is almost equally as involved in my work as I am, which is really odd in that the agent's job is to sell the writing to somebody else. But your agent contributes just as much to make your writing more marketable, to make it more accessible to a wider audience. So, although I'm doing, this is what's messed up, is that although I'm doing all the work, the agent, my agent, or any agent has as much say as somebody else does. Then once it's sold, it goes to the editor who gives you feedback on content and big picture things. And then it goes to the copy editor who nitpicks the sentence structure, the word choice, all of those things. So contemporary publishing has become very much an act of collaboration. And this isn't only true in creative writing. Academic publishing is the same way. Writing for a magazine or newspaper is the same way. And often it causes a lot of conflict. This is personal to me, I have never had an editor that I've gotten along with. I've always fought my editors about things they wanted to cut or things they wanted me to add, whatnot. Now, because of this, in college courses, and the fact that, at least in American society, writing has become so much of a collaborative act, we often do workshops, we do, in literature, creative writing-based courses, we do a lot of literary criticism, a lot of lit crit on each other's work, stuff like that. The same thing is true in the workplace. You will never submit a business plan or anything, or a lab report or anything like that without somebody else offering feedback. That's just the way the written tradition is now. So, writing as a collaboration is something every college student, everyone who's going to enter the workplace needs to become aware of. And technology plays a huge role in that, whether it's through track changes or Google Docs or whatever. Technology has made this process much more streamlined. So writing as an interaction of ideas. So complexities of writers and contradictions. This is interesting in that creative writers tend to have contradictory personalities, and that they can be flexible and adaptable, but yet steadfast in their beliefs, which makes no sense at all, but it relates itself to this idea of self-expression and problem solution, in that we often focus our inner artistic, cathartic efforts on some kind of external tormentor, which gets very esoteric. But my work right now is focused almost entirely on violence on college campuses, because it's something external for me that causes internal conflict. Okay? And then this leads into catharsis. There's a great definition of catharsis in here. Let me find it. I'm sorry, hold on. Let me find it, sorry. Catharsis. Alright, so this is from page 191. They also found that the benefits occur when individuals write about negative rather than positive experiences. Perhaps catharsis is then also a factor, at least some of the time. Catharsis occurs when psychic tension is relieved through self-expression. So this goes back to the therapeutic benefits of writing, in that most often writers focus their efforts on self-medication almost. Well, they do self-medicate through drugs and alcohol, typically, but the act of writing is, at least for me, and I know it's true for many other writers, the act of writing is a form of self-exorcism. Is that something's bothering me, something is weighing me down. It could be something personal or the weight of the world, campus violence, for example, and I find relief through expressing it through writing. And that's a very, very, very common in creative writing. Writing is a solitary act. Writing is easier than speaking. But it's not, because writing is incredibly hard. But writing is much easier than speaking your mind during social interaction. And also, we often seek pleasure in understand. The thing I have here is pleasure from exploring one's own thinking, but we often seek pleasure in understanding our own thinking. That's the important part here, is that once we understand our emotional thought processes, we are better equipped to understand and learn from them and to grow from them. So writing is often an act of seeking understanding. Self-disclosure and literary criticism. This is probably the hardest part about writing professionally, is that when you write something, you're essentially putting your brain, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, you're putting them out there into the world to be judged by others. So you really are writing, wearing your heart on your sleeve, and you really are opening yourself up to emotional vulnerability, which is counterintuitive to the solitary safety of the act of writing. But then you open yourself up to criticism, and hence you seek value through that criticism. If you're told you're a great writer, that you're brilliant, it feels good. It's happened to me. Or if you're told that you suck and you don't deserve your job at the college you teach at, or you don't deserve the recognition you got in the past, that hurts very deeply, in that it's it is very difficult to keep that criticism focused on the work and not you as a person. Alright, we're going to stop there. That's a perfect place to stop.